Hiya, I'm Jasper, and welcome to your video review for Star Trek Discovery, Season 2, spoiler version, so spoiler alert. Link in the description down below for my spoiler-free review of this season, but I feel like since this show is still going on, I should do spoiler-free version, and now this is the spoiler version where I'm going to talk about the individual episodes. So, without further ado, I'm going to skip past the good, the bad, and the furry thing because I'm going to get into the episode, so just moving on. So, starting off with episode 1, Brother. Introduction of Pike. I love Pike, love his intro. It's so good. I love everything about it. And I also love Tig Notaro. She's just absolutely awesome. And it's so fun. Like, every moment that her character's on screen, she is just so snarky. And I love it. So, yes, thumbs up for her. Then there is New Eden. I liked the bending of General Order 1 for, like, moving the humans point. Like, that's fun. And I do also like that in this season, I think it's this season, it's either this season or Stranger Worlds, whatever, but it's called General Order 1, but then they eventually call it, like, they start referring to it as the Prime Directive. I think that's actually this Stranger Worlds. Anywho, point being, it was a fun episode. I also liked Point of Light. Yeah, the need to get Tyler out of there somehow was... They needed to do that because it doesn't make sense for this very human looking person. And, like, could they have just done the thing that they, did in the opening scene of Strange New Worlds, or, like, the beginning episode of Strange New Worlds, where they, like, use some temporary genetic modifications to, like, make him look Klingon? Sure, but, plot points necessary, I guess. I also liked that the Klingon outfits were fixed, because the last Klingon outfits were just, they weren't really fighting looking outfits. They were cool looking, but... like all the little spiky pointy bits, but they weren't like metal, they were just like plasticky looking and just did not seem conducive to battle. And these new outfits, I think, work much better. The dialogue was a little clunky to explain, like, oh, our holy war is over, so that's why we have hair again. Like, a little bit of clunk, but I'm okay with that because of how much they were able to blend their radical interpretation of Klingons to try and match a little bit closer to the 90s and early 2000s era of Klingons, and I think that this is a good transition with how they did that. I do also think it's funny that at the end of, I believe it's this episode, that they're like, she's like, oh, my baby and everything else is dead, so, like, I need a more powerful name than Empress, and I'm going to be called, like, you can call me Mother. And then they proceed to never call her that again and continue to refer to her as Emperor. So, like, I am woman, hear me roar moment, and then, then we're just going to move on and never use that again. So, whatever. So the next episode, an O-Ball for Sharon, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's nice to see that Saru knows so many languages, but it does cheapen the number of languages that the famous Hoshi Sato knew. Because I think that he knows like 93 and she knew like 86 or something, or 56, somewhere around there. Point is that when I saw this, I was like, oh, this random guy... Don't get me wrong, I love Saru's character. But essentially, this random guy knows more languages than the famous Hoshi Sato. And she's famous in the Star Trek universe because Lower Decks points out how famous she is. And I want to say, maybe it was on this one, or maybe it was on Stranger Worlds, but somebody was pointing out, like, oh, Hoshi Sato is so amazing. Did you know that she knew blah, blah, blah number of languages? And all that jazz. So, like, clearly, she is famous, Saru's not, and yet they have him know more languages. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I thought that was... They could have had him know many languages, but not more than Hoshi Sato. Anyhow. So the next episode, Saints of Imperfection. I like the effect that they had in May's universe, but it seemed like they were saying, both in Season 1 of Discovery and at various points in Season 2, that using the mycelial network damages it. But they keep on doing it. Like, are they doing 130 jumps in like a 5-minute period? No. But they are still like, oh, hey, we need to get to the beta quadrant. Boom, we're going to take it. Oh, hey, we need to get over here. Boom, we're going to, like, so they've decreased their use, but they're still using it. And I feel like they need to stop, and maybe I'm just misinterpreting the, like, actual damage to the mycelial network. Maybe it was all the doctor dude causing all the damage, and maybe I'm misinterpreting or misremembering. But it seems like to me that in Season 1 and even parts of Season 2, that they're like, it's bad for the network, stop it. But then they ignore that because it's inconvenient, because the cool thing about the Discovery is the spore drive and how they're able to get to one end of the galaxy to the other. I don't know. But it almost kind of reminds me of that like Next Generation episode where they were like, going past warp 6 disrupts and degrades and damages subspace itself, so stop it. And then there was like one other episode in Next Generation where they were like, we need permission to go faster than warp 6 to get there. We got it? Okay, cool, now we're gonna go. And then other than that, they were like, fuck that, that's dumb. We need to be able to go to warp 9, 9.9, whatever else. So then they just kind of dropped it. And I feel like that's what they should do with this and stop making a thing about the damage. Anyhow, next is the Sound of Thunder. I like the new change in Saru that we've seen. I think it's really fun to see him try to rein in that newfound assertiveness that he has because, you know, thinking about the aspect of somebody being able to rise to that like lieutenant commander level or commander level and still be that like essentially like a prey species, something that I think that's a kind of a unique thing. And then to see that change of like how is that going to affect his entire outlook and how his command style is. And I don't know if it was always planned or if there was like fan feedback about like we want a stronger Saru or like that doesn't make any sense. Like I don't know what the fan feedback was, but I liked Prey Saru and I liked Predator Saru. I like both of them. I like how they did that. So 2 thumbs up. I do think it's funny the number of shirtless scenes that they had in this season of Saru because the guy who plays Saru is a very skinny gentleman. Props to him being able to maintain that for however long he's been alive. But then they do the shirtless scenes, and he's clearly gained several inches around everywhere because of prosthetics. So it's funny because he's otherwise such a skinny guy. And the uniforms on Discovery are so thin that it draws a little bit of attention to the limitations of prosthetics even today. Anywho, still fun though. And it was a little funny to me that, you know, he was all tied up and chained in that one spot, and then through the power of anger, I shall break these chains that are designed specifically to hold people like me that are angry. But sure, I liked the just general classic Hollywoodism of like, through my determination of will, I shall be able to break the bonds of whatever things that shouldn't be able to be broken. But because I'm that passionate about the thing, it'll happen. So I thought that was a really fun implementation, even though it was kind of like, does that make all the sense in the world? Maybe, maybe not. But then we move on to Light and Shadows. Finally, we get to see Spock. It's like 7 episodes in where they've been talking about him since season 1, end of, I think, or beginning of this season. But like we finally get to see Spock. And he does look good in a beard. And I will point out that like he shaves at the very end of the season, and whatever lighting they used, or maybe because he'd had the beard for so long that there were some divots, but Jesus, man, his face kind of reminded me of that like scarred dude from Gladiator. So whatever lighting they used for beardless Spock was not flattering on him, but Strange New Worlds, same Spock, also without a beard, looks fantastic. So whatever happened there to there, they fixed because beardless Spock does look really, really good in Strange New Worlds. And bearded Spock looks good in this world. But I like the character. You know, everybody loves Leonard Nimoy, don't get me wrong, and Zachary Quinto was also phenomenal, but I like this interpretation of Spock as well. And that's one of the things, is that I like all the Joker interpretations from Jack Nicholson onward. I think that they each have their place. And they are different styles. With this one, I liked each of the different takes on Spock, and that they do a good job of, I think it's more so even in Strange New Worlds, but like looking at Spock through the lens of like the 2 different worlds that he is a part of, and I think that they do a good job of exploring that. So yeah, and then I also think that they came up with a reasonable explanation for why he has a sister, and that they are sister and brother, and that like the original series and everything else never really addressed Michael Burnham, because so much of what Michael Burnham did was classified and also so long ago. And the fact that, like, you don't know everybody's family. Like, have you ever met Picard's brother? I think, like, maybe once or something. So I think it's totally reasonable for him and her to be brother and sister. And I loved their interactions so much because they were definitely got that, like, sibling attitude and conversation perfect. Top notch there. So if memory serves, was fun to see the new interpretation of the aliens, but yeah, so sorry, going back real quick to the episode 7 where he finally leaves the Spock, I will say that I didn't think that the reason for the insanity and all the craziness that he had and like running away and like logic failed me and yada yada yada, I feel like that wasn't quite a good enough reason, and that they couldn't figure out a better one, so they just went with this one. But I'm okay with that because it did help with the mystery through up until this episode and trying to really explore that. So a little bit of a letdown once we discover the mystery, but that's okay. Anyway, back to If Memory Serves. I like the new interpretation of the aliens that they had. I even liked that they had the TOS flashback to show, like, they didn't try to recreate with modern CGI, modern actors, everything else, modern sets and all that, the instances that they were flashing back to. They were straight up like, no, this is in the same universe as the original series, so previously on Star Trek universe, this original series stuff happened. So, and I thought that was a really, really good choice. And I liked the updates that they did to that style of aliens. Doc, like the Doc who came back from the dead and Stamets' problems, they do seem really, really forced, in my opinion. Like, I get that he went through a traumatic thing, but like Star Trek is famous for like fixing that mental psyche damage thing pretty well in the future. So I felt like their problems was very rom-com. You need to have a conflict before you can have the final resolution. And then the final resolution in this, which was like, oh shit, we're in a life-threatening situation. Gosh, I do actually love you. Great. Seems a bit too easy. So the disagreements between them was kind of dumb, and then the resolution was a bit too easy. So, for that. But it did give more screen time to Doc, and Stamets was less of an asshole in this season, so I'm down for that. Project Daedalus, I like Section 31, and I'm sad that they still haven't gotten that series that I feel like they were supposed to. And I've heard that it's going to be a movie or a miniseries or a couple of movies or whatever, but regardless, we need more Section 31 because this season was definitely set up for a Section 31 spinoff. Just saying. I don't know why they didn't. I'm pissed off that they didn't. Moving on to the Red Angel, it seems like a reasonable solution, but the problem is that with time travel, wouldn't she see the trap? So their whole trap is like, we're going to make it so that you're in danger, and then, get her once she comes to save you. But like through time travel, isn't she able to see that future? Just saying, like, there are some problems with time travel problems here. So I think Discovery has did a good job this season. Like this season, and even in Strange New Worlds with Pike's like inevitable destiny type of thing from the original series, like I think that they did a very good job of not having temporal Cold War bullshit like they did in Enterprise. So they have navigated the time travel things much better than those shows. Anyhow, Perpetual Infinity, damn, just man. Michael Burnham's mom is so cold to her, and then does like a 180 just a little while later, and it's so hard to believe that she's just like, I will see you die 1,000 times, and then like, baby, everything I did was for you. Like, really? I don't know. That seems poor to me. Through the Valley of Shadows, it's interesting choice to have him know that he is not going to die, but have that medical prison thing, and it's odd that like. When he's in the time crystal area, that Klingon just like cracks one off and is like, there you go, that's all you need. Like, what if you needed like a little bit more and he only gave you that much? Do you have to go back? Like, I don't know. And then the whole next issue of like, we need to process this crystal so it can fit in the back of the thing. And like, Tig Notaro's character was just like, hey, like, I'm gonna stay in this room and see all the crazy future things because I'm gonna be able to handle it. We don't need 3 people here, you go, but we need to speed up the processing. Why does she have to be in the room? Like, you're pressing a button that says, like, laser process this. Everybody just leave the room. That seems pretty easy. In fact, even just have a timer set up to be like, hey, start processing this without the shielding as soon as we're out of the room, and have established an exterior to the room shielding. But whatever. Gotta have her sacrificed, right? Anywho. So, yeah. Also, they've established that now there's this sect of Klingons that has time crystals that can rewrite everything, but no one ever bothers them again. Like, all right, sure, I guess. Just leave that laying there to rewrite anything anytime you want to. Such Sweet Sorrow Part 1, they just couldn't they have just kept firing on Discovery until the shields collapsed? Like, they were like, oh, we can't destroy the Discovery, so we have to throw her into the future. Leave a couple people on board to keep her from, warping away, or start off with taking out her warp engines, and then just blasting her smithereens. You don't need to send her to the future in order to destroy that database. Just saying. Seems pretty simple. So this whole last part of coming together seems so contrived just to get them to the future. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm okay with that in principle, of like coming up with a reason to bring them into the future, because I get that was clearly one of their goals, is like bringing them into the future frees them from all of this continuity stuff that they have to get around, and then they're able to explore further technologies that our CGI can create. So I get that, and much like with this, nostalgia of Picard having bent over backwards with believability to bring all the characters together, I'm fine with that. Like, I'm fine with having to get them into the future. But I still feel like they had the nostalgia factor. This didn't have all that, like, built-up goodwill, especially from season 1. So I think that they should have worked a little bit harder on the writing to make that make sense. Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2, so, like, really factors in, because literally control is on the ship, and yet you're still going to throw it into the future. And also, it's like, if you take him, like, human control him, into the future, it magically kills all of him and his minions in the present. That's just so convenient. And it seems pretty unlikely for a thing made of computer systems to not have some backup of himself somewhere, just in case things go awry. But whatever, I guess. I do love the ships in the last episode, and how they all had drones and fighters and shuttles, and how that battle plays out. Like, that CGI was absolutely phenomenal. How it was shot, how it was paced, and the, like, how you were able to keep track of all the different ships, and even that, like, last sequence where she's in the spacesuit and all those ships are around her, that definitely reminded me of Ender's Game, the movie, and in a good way, because basically the ship battles were the only good thing about that movie, in my opinion. So that was fun to see. And they even, Burnham's Journey to the Asteroids, that was fun. And then with, like, Discovery, so they had to come up with a reason to keep Spock from going to the future. Having him be in the shuttle was kind of a bullshit thing anyway, and then, like, oh, hey, my shuttle's been damaged, I can't go with you, and then Discovery shields are damaged, so we can't beam me back. Oh, sad days, like, party of such sweet sorrow, and then they leave the thing. But first, they restored Discovery shields to 40% because they connected some cables, and then, like, Enterprise is able to beam things, right? Beam things on and off. So why couldn't you beam him onto Discovery? Again, that's a plot hole, lazy writing thing that is part of why this second season, on the second rewatch for me, like on rewatching it, doesn't have as high of a marks as the first time I watched it, because you go from what I thought, especially watching the individual episodes, was so terrible season 1, to this, that it was just such a huge change and huge relief to have actually better writing, that I glossed over some things just thinking that maybe I missed it. But on this rewatch, I didn't miss it. It's just, at least I don't think I missed it. Maybe I didn't, but I don't think I missed it. Of, like, the reasons for him not going were just plot hole city, in my opinion. But that's okay, because I get that we had to keep Spock here in order for the original series to happen, and then you need to bump Discovery ahead so that they would stop having to deal with all of that. So overall, still like the season, but that's why the gap between season 1 and season 2 has decreased. But that's really all I have for this one. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you at the next one. Bye.